And so it is. Here Imzaia, energy weavers, enlightened seekers, enlightened ones, I welcome you. There is water. Do you hear the water? Do you smell it? You taste it? You feel it all around you. You feel it inside of you. There are waves. Waves that are not coming into you, but waves that are pouring out. Pouring out of you at every single moment. There is a stillness. A stillness that exists between the beating of the human heart. These are the waves that come out of you. If only you notice them. All of us on this earth are accustomed to listening to the sounds of things, listening to the beating of the heart. But none listen to the silence of the heart. None listen to the moments in between, to the power of stillness. And the reason why we are all drawn to noise is the mind. For the mind can only exist when it is thinking. And thoughts are precious on this planet, in this life. Thoughts make money. Thoughts create movement. And where can we find stillness? In consciousness. And consciousness does not exist in the mind. It exists in the heart. There are so many today who are traveling the world looking for answers, looking for portals. Most don't see that every place where you are, a portal exists. Everywhere. It is always the heart. We are very close here now to Merlin's cave. And some of you here have entered the cave before. You just entered into a space. Your heart wasn't in that space. And today, your heart is inside. The stillness of consciousness. The stillness of non-movement. Daring to not move. Daring to exist within that place where science says there is no life. There is no energy, there is no electricity going on inside of the human heart. Science says that it is the pumping of the heart that creates life, but it is the stillness of the heart that creates consciousness. And if we look at this, then this would mean that life and consciousness are not equals. Are they? They are not. Life is just an expression of biology. Consciousness doesn't need life to exist. Consciousness never needs life to exist. The Lemurian consciousness has been on this planet for generations, decades, eons, since its final reckoning. It has had no life, biological life, that we know today. And yet it exists. Because science looks at the beating of the heart, it can never understand consciousness. It can never understand that when you enter into stillness, you don't need a body. You don't need movement. You don't need all of these things. You exist anyway. And that is the message in water. The waves can only exist in the moments between the waves. Then they enter into completion. Then they enter into a state of infinity. And this stillness is something that people tend to run away from. Today, I want you to look at your stillness. Examine your day. See how many thoughts you've had. Even though you are enlightened seekers, even though you call yourselves Imzaia, even though you are the ones who are willing to change the planet, to raise the consciousness. Raising consciousness cannot be found in a technique. It cannot be found in these words that I am speaking now. It is found in stillness. Raising consciousness happens at a point where you lose your train of thought. And again, losing a train of thought, forgetting what you were saying, forgetting what you were thinking, is seen as negative on this planet. For if you forget your train of thought, then indeed you must not be productive, right? Maybe the most productive you can be on the planet right now is eliminating every single thought. This does not mean eliminating consciousness. This does not mean eliminating stillness. If you take what we have said about water and the human heart up to your brain, what do you think happens to the brain when the brain is not thinking? There is still electrical activity. There's just no thoughts. Thoughts are not your own. They are just a reaction to an outside environment that you do not see as your own environment. The only reason why thoughts exist is because you have displaced yourselves from the world around you. If you see yourself as a whole to the world around you, if you see that the rocks you are sitting on, if you see that the sky that you're looking at, the waves that you're looking at on this beautiful beach, indeed, is you, then there is no need for thought. The only reason why thoughts exist is because you have created a displacement wave between you and everything around you. And here you sit, and you look at each other if you wish, and you think it's a different person. You think it's a different material, this rock. It's not made of flesh and bone, so it can't be you. But who says that you are made of flesh and bone? Who says that this flesh and bone that you carry around you is real? Have you ever looked at another person with your heart? If you do, The flesh doesn't matter. The structure of the face doesn't matter. The structure of the body, the thickness of matter doesn't matter. And yet when we think, we tend to compare. We enter into comparison. And there we go. The moment you think one thought, automatically you will need another. The mind will need another. So that the first thought and the second thought can be compared. And when that comparison is complete and a balance is created between two thoughts, a third one is necessary. For once again, we need to go into comparison. We need to look at what is us and what is the other. Once you have processed a thought, you will think it is your own. And so, a new one comes in. And again, you need the comparison. And you compare it to what you already know. Never to what you already feel. You see? And yet the heart knows about stillness. It knows that true consciousness exists between these tiny little heartbeats. Before this Akaraya started, this talk, you were thinking about the Lemurians. And you were talking about how the Lemurians entered into the rocks as their bodies disappeared. Their consciousness continued to exist. How do you think a Lemurian gets into a rock? And this is not a joke. How do you think he gets into a rock? How do you think you could get into a rock? Sorry? Be the rock. Yes, but how can you be the rock?
Get the same
frequency. There is truth. Frequency is the same stillness that exists between the heartbeats. Frequency can only appear when two things are defined and in between there is a frequency, because a frequency is always a shift. So, to the Lemurians in the rock, all they did is that they chose to exist between two moments, two heartbeats. And this is where they are still today. So for them, no time has passed. It is the physical level, the physical plane that creates the heartbeats. So as the physical plane creates the heartbeats, the physical existence itself, so time is created and so space is created. If you go into the stillness, then you can exist anywhere. And this is frequency. Science sees frequency as an active element. It is not. It is a non-active element existing in a non-sensic field, in a non-materialistic field. So, if you want to exist, if you want to seek eternal life, if you want to seek eternal joy, eternal consciousness, all you need to do is cancel out the physical waves that are coming in at any given point. For this is existing in time and space. The stillness of consciousness. What I have given you now is theory. What I have given you now is a place, a field that you can use to occupy your mind so that you can go into the stillness. There is no place in stillness. It is all around you. What do you hear? What do you hear when you hear that water? What would happen if you would listen to that waterfall over there, in between your heartbeats? Would the water stop? What happens when time stops? What happens when space stops? There is enlightenment. The world will look no different than it looks right now. You will still exist within the same world. You will still walk around in the human flesh, if you will. Only you will not be in a space that occupies the mind at the same time. Those of you who were here last time in Tintagel, at Merlin's cave, saw a different space than you have seen today. The previous space you were in was a space of the mind. As I said before, the place you are in today is a space of the heart. It's the same space. There were people walking around. The day is passing by. Hours are moving ahead. But to you, no time has passed. Your bodies haven't aged. Those of you who would be aware of your physiology would even have noticed that when you were inside of the cave, your heart was not beating. You were existing in between your heartbeats. And this is the secret of the big Merlin. This is the magic of the big Merlin. The ability to raise the consciousness to such an extent that you can exist in stillness. And in stillness, there is a void. And in the void, reality takes shape. Any reality you like. Any way you like it. So then, if this is true, why have you gone through this process of eons and eons and eons of evolution, where you had to be on planet Earth or any other planet, where you had to evolve from this primal thing, this ape-like figure that the human body is, to this point? It's simple. You had to understand the nature of reality. You had to understand the grandness of reality. And you had to understand about losing control. The mind, because it's always thinking, wants control of its surrounding reality. And yet it can never achieve its control, and this creates a tension field. This tension field, where the frustration builds up to a certain level of loss of control, is what you call the ego. The ego only exists in those who seek control of their environment. If you can surrender control, you achieve control, but in a different way. The mind is always living in the past. It's always looking at a reality like this one around you. that existed mere seconds before the thought could form in the head. Always. And as such, you have no control over a past reality. Why does the mind do this? Because it needs to process information. It needs to process information all the time. It needs to look at energy that has been given form, that has been given shape, and it needs to define this shape and this form before it can enter into a thought process. The heart, when it beats, exists in the now. It doesn't need time. It doesn't need to analyze. It doesn't need to process. It doesn't need to have thought. It just feels. It just senses its environment around it. And this is the power of love. This is the power of magnetism. It sends out this pulse, you see, constantly. Only it doesn't do it when you would think it does it. It doesn't do it when you have a heartbeat happen in your body. It does it in the moments in between. And this pulse is called love. This pulse is called consciousness. So stillness is not stillness at all. Just like a wave is not a wave at all. A wave is just water expressing itself. And why? Because of the magnetic pull of the moon. That's the reason why a wave exists. The magnetic pull of the moon. The moon is in love with the earth. That's why there is a magnetic pull. The earth is in love with the moon. That's why they circle around each other. Eternally, gracefully, never touching. Just discovering one another again and again and again. For the moon understands that the earth is always new. The moon understands that whenever it looks at the earth, there is something different. No moment is alike. And if indeed the waves are created by the magnetic pull of the moon, that the waves are created by the moon loving the earth, so you can create your reality by being in love with everything around you, looking at things around you in stillness. You will never hear the moon and the earth talk. Never. They don't need to. They understand each other. They have an agreement, you see, they have a relationship towards one another. They gravitate towards one another, and yet this incredible gravitational field, this mass that is bigger than anything you can imagine with your mind, does not crush the earth, nor does the earth crush the moon. They have found balance. In this huge, huge force called gravity, they have found balance. And so reality around you is an example. There are huge forces inside of you. Huge. Inside all of you. You are planets revolving around each other. You are universes trying to make contact. But in making contact, in touch, you try to once again put your energy onto something, some person, some object. And this is something you cannot do. It will always create unbalance. It will always upset the other system. What if the moon got so greedy? What if the moon got so lusty that she really needed to penetrate the earth, touch the earth, become one with the earth? She would destroy the earth and all life. And so, these two great lovers choose to do their eternal dance, hence creating a reality where consciousness can thrive. You have all done this. You have all, energetically speaking, penetrated one another, tried to possess the other. And you have destroyed others. You have destroyed originality in others, as you have been destroyed by others in your original authentic state. As others try to possess you, as others try to control you. Why would they do such a thing? Only because they thought this was love. They thought it was necessary. If they really wanted to connect, that they had to take over the other's sovereignty. And so the story goes on this planet Earth, where people continue to do this, where companies continue to do this, where families do this all the time, where economies do it, where countries do it. And soon, if you were to discover other life in the universe at this point in time, where planets would do it, you would do great battle indeed. Is this the point of existence? Trying to put your energy onto another life form? No. This is only the result of the mind creating thoughts by which you think the other life form is not you. If you go into the stillness of the heart, in the moment between the heartbeats, you would know, and you will know, and you do know, that all this other life around you, all these other objects revolving around you, is really you, just you. The moon understands that the sun is a reflection of the energy of the earth. The sun understands that the moon is a reflection of the energy of the earth. The earth understands that the moon is a reflection of the sun, and the sun understands that it is a reflection of Mars. And Mars understands it's a reflection of yet another planet. And so this entire solar system exists in balance. If you are listening to this message, if you have put your heart in the position to hear these words, just words, these sounds, then this means that you have gotten to a point where you can be like the solar system, where you can enter into relationships, where you can enter into exchange with another by just revolving around the other, by just using the gravitational field that exists when two magnetic fields, when two fields of love come together. There is a dance again, you see? If you raise your consciousness, you would see the entire planet and all life is dancing. You would see that those drops of water that form this waterfall over there, that they are not destroying each other, they're just dancing, they're just playing around with all the other elements, ending up as they should, ending up as they can. Take your examples, take your lessons from the world around you. Take your lessons from the earth and from the light of the sun and from the water. Take your lessons. Why wouldn't you? This is the reason why you incarnated into a body. And this is why you are on planet Earth right now. This is why you are reliving all the great histories. As you have talked before, at the beginning of this day, when you were talking about the higher self, and how the higher self lives all of these lives through time and space. And at one given point, all of these lives, the energy of all the lives, they just subtract. And they blend together, becoming one. One life. And then you inject this life back into the earth. And at that point, you are no longer here to learn. You are here to teach. And this is a different perspective. You are not only here to teach others, you are also here to teach yourselves. But if you say that you are here to learn, and again you place the reality outside of you. If you say that you are here to teach yourself, and this means that the reality is inside of you. And you are the teacher of you. And this is important. Because if you are your own teacher, then you are all that is. So now that the great histories are coming back to life, it is time for a new perspective on the planet. Histories that existed thousands of years ago, in different realities sometimes, like the one you are in right now. England. So many theories about England, so many people who have said Avalon exists in Glastonbury, or Avalon exists at some island, Isle of Man, or Avalon exists right here in Tintagel in Cornwall. It's just an energy. It exists on the entire country, on the entire island of England, United Kingdom. The energy is everywhere. But if you look at Avalon, there's only one way you could get to it. Through the waters. And again, I remind you that the water itself is not important, it's the movement the water makes, or at best the energy in between the movements. Just like the human heart. Now, if Avalon is a different dimension, because we all like to talk about dimensions these days and about all these technical things. Now, if Avalon is a different dimension, and if it can be reached through the non-movement of the water, and if the non-movement of the water is the stillness of the human heart in between the heartbeats, then this means that you can do as the Lemurians once did, that you can travel dimensions, shift dimension, by just raising the consciousness in between the movements of the heart. People today have a much too difficult understanding of dimensions. They connect it with technology. And if you connect it with technology, then you get into this entire system. Which is true. You can breach dimensions with technology. You can create artificial magnetic fields. But you can't dance through the dimensions with technology. You can only do that with your own energy. Again, love is the answer. What happened here in Merlin's cave, as you shifted dimensions, you did it through love. Everybody here was in a state of love. Even love for yourself, as you are understanding that you are God. This is love for the self, finally. And once you get to this understanding, and you can love the other, the God aspect of the other inside of the other, which is you. So as you were dancing through these dimensions, you don't need technology. You don't need high-powered devices to dismaterialize your body and displace you through time and space. You can do it all by yourself. All you need is love. Rat-ta-ta-da-da. But it is true. The great ones who wrote these parables called music, called song, called lyrics. So many times a day they are played on the radio, and so many times a day they are not listened to, they aren't heard for real. You can listen to so many things, you can inform yourselves to such a great extent that you forget that you have a heart, that you have your own energy to work with at any given point. And this is all you will ever need. And then there are the others, the other expressions of you through time and space, through the universe. All these other names that you have carried and still carry. And then there are even others besides that who exist in between dimensions. You see, you are all here this week. We are just in the first day. You are all here this week to understand your relation to nature, your relation to the world, your relation to yourself. You are here this week to understand your own consciousness. Understanding your own consciousness means understanding the entire universe. And so you will shift dimensions in the course of this week. You are beginning to do so already today. And you will see the great miracles that you like to see. Only if you wish to see them. Only if you choose to see them. Only if you allow yourselves to see them. And one of these great miracles that exist throughout the universe are these things called magnetic portals. Now, what is a magnetic portal? You will get to learn about these portals. You will get to work with them even. Actually, you already started working with them today, but you don't realize it yet. You will soon. What is a magnetic portal? If magnetism is love, the heart, again, the heart, a magnetic portal is love. So you constantly create magnetic portals if you enter into a state of love. If you go in between the heartbeats and you love one another. And this is a magnetic portal. Because you are creating, at that point, you are creating a different reality than the ones you were existing in before. The only problem is, if you create such a reality, if you connect to another person, and you get this feeling of love, your brain starts thinking, I need to hold on to this. This is a good feeling. I need to attach myself to it. I need to grab on. And so, you destroy the reality that you have just created because you are collapsing again back into a state of mind. There you go. Gone with the wind, which we will deal in tomorrow. So love is this constantly shifting, well, I can't even find words to describe it. It cannot be described. It's like the Lemurians knew. They just had one word for love, and for every single feeling it was called Imzaia. That was the word they gave for any actual feeling. Now, back to the magnetic portals. If the Lemurians knew that feeling was something and that love was something you could not really describe, and that the love you feel for one person is completely different to the love you feel for another person, or another person, or another person, or another person, then there you go. These are the dimensions of time and space. These are the dimensions of reality. The love that you feel at any given moment in between the heartbeats. It is always different. So you are wanting to shift dimension, unknowing that you are constantly shifting dimension. Constantly. Every different feeling that you have is another dimension. It is the non-recognition of this that keeps you stuck in your minds. If you were to recognize this simple fact that every feeling of love you have, even for the same person, it will be different at any given moment, that this is a different dimension, you would be in constant movement. You would be the waves again. You would be this dance again. And you wouldn't get stuck. So there you go. You were in the belief system that there were 12 dimensions. So this means that you could only love in 12 different moments of time and space, in 12 different ways. What a limitation. What a rejection of the grandness of nature. What a rejection of the grandness of the human heart. And even saying that there's 8 billion people on the planet, so there's 8 billion dimensions, would also be ridiculous. Some would say, Lemurians would say, that this planet is one dimension. What they do is they subdivide this dimension into sub-levels. They create 8 billion, 10 billion, 15 billion different sub-dimensions, which they call relationships that you have with one another. And they are in the understanding that even this is ridiculous. You cannot attach a number to a dimension. You cannot attach a number to the drops of water in this ocean behind you, or in the waterfall over there. You can't. No one can. No one should. Maybe one day there will be a scientist who thinks it would be a good idea to get a grant so that he can analyze how many drops there are in the ocean on this planet Earth. Who knows? Maybe one day there will be a scientist who wants to discover how many different kinds of love there are. Who knows? But you don't need to discover this. You only need to experience it. You don't need to analyze it. You just need to go with this flow you call life. If you do this, you will start noticing that the day doesn't have 24 hours. It doesn't. This is just another belief system. you will discover that a body hasn't got a limited time of life on this earth. It is just a belief system. And why? Because it is interesting to the society and the governments that exist today to have a revolving set of humans that they can drain, one after the other. The Lemurians that are in the rocks today, dear ones, they're the ones who started the entire Lemurian experiment. They never died. They never died. The ones that are in here right now are the ones that began everything. You will never find a Lemurian funeral if you were to find scriptures of Lemuria. There isn't a funeral in Lemuria. There isn't death. Death only came into play when there was a different way of looking at power. When there was a different way of looking at life itself. When life became divided, when it became important for certain people to have control over other people, a small group to have control over a larger group, this is when the world became mental. This is when technology started to take shape. Now, there will be more moments when we continue with this. What we are doing now is Ekaraya. And it's going to be up to you to make the shift. Still you are listening. Still you are just listening to ideas. Still you are just being passive, basically. And why? Because you are afraid to be alive? Because you are afraid to go into this self-exploration? Because you are afraid of your own inner voice, your own inner knowing. You don't need me to sit here and talk to you all day. You don't. You need you to listen to you and to find out about you. And this is something we can do together. But we need to do it together. Maybe it could be an interesting question for you as you pass this evening that will now commence, because there is time and space, to investigate why it is easier to sit there and listen than to enter into a relationship, to start a dance of energy. I'm expressing these energies in words now. Could be more interesting to enter into the dance with me. I have created this Lemurian word. It's a new word, and as such it's an old word. A new word for this society, called Ekaraya. Let's say it's not a discussion from the heart, but a dance from the heart. If you believe that you are God also, then it would be much more interesting to interact with one another instead of just sitting here passively chewing away at these words that I'm giving you. I wonder how they taste. I wonder how they feel. I wonder how they smell. Maybe they just smell like the water. The water that flows at any given point. You smell the salt. You hear the gulls. The gulls are interacting with me. The water is interacting with me. The waves are. And you create a separation between you and me. You create a person sitting here giving you words. And I continue to give you words. More words. More words. More words. And why? Until you finally say, stop. In the name of love. So, how about we end this for today? And tomorrow we look at another way of handling this. Tomorrow I invite you, all of you, to enter into your own universe. I invite you to dance with me. You will be startled at the way in which you dance. You will be startled at the information, at the truth you can flow out of you. Now I invite you, one last time, to look at the ocean and to listen to the ocean and to understand that one wave cannot exist without the other. Let me be one wave. And I just invite you to be the others, so that all of us can form this ocean, and so that I do not need to be the only one that travels these dimensions. In the last few days, before most of you were here and we were traveling through Glastonbury, at different points in time, I have tried to take certain people with me into a different type of consciousness, to journey together, as it were, through layers of dimension, through layers of truth, through layers of love. And each and every time, everyone has expected me to open the door. Now, I invite you to understand that we are not the door. We are not the key. We are just the waves. And all of us together need to create this ocean. If we can do that, then we can change everything. Not from this perspective of the head, but just from the dance of the heart. So let's dance together. Just for a while. Until next time. And so it is.